Hello, this is a short bonus episode for those of you that are new to the podcast, and also for those who've been listening for a while but may not have realised there are more episodes because you're viewing them from my website rather than from a podcast app. It's also to highlight some of my older episodes that you may not have come across. So just a quick explanation. When I started podcasting, I decided I would release a podcast and a budcast on alternate weeks. Budcasts were designed to be shorter and just involved me speaking about gardening stuff, and podcasts were longer and usually took the format of interviews. However, as the podcast has evolved, I've realised that I really like speaking to other people about what they're doing, and I'm not so interested in speaking about myself. Which is not to say that I won't be putting out any more episodes where it's just a monologue, but for now, I have lots of interviews already recorded or lined up. So from now on, I'll just be releasing main podcast episodes on a weekly basis and scrapping the shorter budcast for now. If you're downloading episodes from my website, the budcast will still be there under the budcast tab until I can sort out my website, so don't miss them. A couple of people haven't realised they're there and have been delighted to find an extra 30 odd episodes because they didn't realise they existed. If you're listening on a podcast app, this won't be a problem for you because the episodes are all listed in numerical order from number 1 up to number, I think it's 73, which is the last one released. So what I'm going to go through now is the back catalogue, and it will make sense if you're looking at the podcast in a podcast app, but not so much if you're looking at the website. So hopefully you can all log into a podcast app of your choice. So here's a very brief rundown of what you're missing. If you're new to gardening, you may like the plant profiles episodes where I deep dive into specific plants with expert growers. In this series I've covered alliums in episode 15 with the National Collection holder Jackie Curry. I covered daffodils in 38 with Adrian Scamp of Scamp's Bulbs. Peonies in number 67 with Alec White of Primrose Hall Nurseries. Ivy in 26 with Angela Tandy of Fibrex. And then there was Dahlias in episode 1 with Dave Gillam, who's the chairman of the National Dahlia Society. You might also enjoy episodes 6 and 33, which were parts 1 and 2 of my interview with Louise Bell on allotments. And also check out my recap of plant hardiness in episode 25. So if you're thinking about being a little bit more hands-off and actually working with a garden designer or hiring a gardener, then episodes 2 with Claire Vokins and 4 with Andrew Fisher-Tomlin of the London College of Garden Design are packed full of useful information. If you're a houseplant fan, you might like episode 6 with plant retailer Jason Stevens, episode 11 with Matthew Soper of Hampshire Carnivorous Plants. Exotic plant fans will love episode 39 with Graham of Plant Based Nursery. He's a grower of all sorts of weird and wonderful plants. Also, episode 62 with Alison Mowat, who runs Alison Mowat Studio out of Shoreditch and uses plants to create the most incredible pieces of living art. If you're interested in vegan gardening, there are episodes 28 and 30, and they're with garden designer Cleve West and Matthew Appleby, who's the author of The Super Organic Gardener. If veg growing is your thing, I have episodes 43 and 50, which are parts 1 and 2 of a talk I recorded that was given by Ian Tolhurst at VegFest, and he talks about his method of stock-free farming, whereby he uses no animal products and aims to keep a closed system on his farm. In episode 44, I'm talking kitchen gardening with James Mellors, and episode 46 is no-dig gardening with Charles Dowding. Episode 57 is with Alex Mitchell, talking about her book Crops in Tight Spots, about veg growing when space is limited. In episode 31, I talk about open source seeds, and in episode 24, I talk to the late Isaiah Levy about his seed share project. Moving on to soils and composts, episode 21 is me talking to Craig Sams of Carbon Gold about biochar. Episode 29 is with Caroline Cotton of Fertile Fibre, talking about their range of peat-free, organic and some vegan composts. Then there's the king of soil himself, Tim O'Hare, in episode 71, where we talk about the fundamentals of soil management. Kind of on this topic as well was episode 52, talking about the importance of being peat-free with garden journalist and peat-free campaigner John Walker. If wildlife is your thing, then you must listen to all of these episodes. Episode 3, I spoke about worms with Paul Hetherington of Bug Life. Episode 17 was foxes and how to successfully share your garden with them. 34 was hedgehogs with the inimitable Hugh Warwick. 42, I spoke to Kate Bradbury about her wildlife gardening book. Episode 60 was Penny Hearn of the Bee Watch app. That was talking about honeybees and about the importance of tracking them and recording incidences of diseases, and also about recording pest spray. And then a slightly other end of the scale, episode 55 was Professor Dave Gorson talking about our native bees. Then there was Kate Risley of the British Trust for Ornithology talking about birds, and that was episode 68. And Joe Ferguson of the Bat Conservation Trust talking about bats for this year's Halloween episode, which was episode 70. If you're concerned about gardening in a changing climate, episode 19 with Toby Diggins was a real listener favourite. We spoke about Toby's design ethic, which he terms aesthetic ecology. Episode 23 is a recording of a panel discussion I took part in on climate change gardening. I also get really serious on this subject in episodes 35, 37 and 41, where I talk about native, non-native and invasive plants. Episode 59 with John Little on gardening for all species is another favourite with listeners, and you will probably also like episode 65 with Benjamin Vogt, talking about his style of garden design practice, in which he uses only native prairie plants. And then there's episode 66 with Neil Sinden talking about public green spaces in our cities. Last week's episode with Thomas Rayner is also very relevant. In episode 45, I spoke to Giles Heap, who's the MD of CD Stone, about sourcing stone ethically and the environmental costs of the different stone products you can source. And we also chatted about more environmentally friendly ways to use stone in hard landscaping. Episode 54 with Chris Williams of Edible Culture Nurseries is great. Chris talks about running a nursery with strong ethics around sustainability. And talking about running an ethical business, the episode on cut flowers with Georgie Newberry of Common Farm Flowers is really heartening. She's running a brilliant business and doing really great work. And that is episode 51. Finally, episode 49 with garden designer and Chelsea Flower Show disruptor Mary Reynolds is a good one. Mary talks about her project We Are an Ark, which encourages people to create spaces that are havens for them and for wildlife, and she talks about reconnecting with nature. Another all-time favourite episode is number 12 on trees with Peter Thurman, and this is relevant and enjoyable for everyone, so I thoroughly recommend that. And from the Titan of trees to the container gardening guru, Harriet Rycroft tells you everything you could ever want to know about successfully growing plants in pots in episode 40. If you're into foraging and wild food, episode 36 with Michael Vuchter is a good one. He takes me foraging and I cover that. Episode 63 with Jan Billington about edible flowers is great. And episode 69 on edible mushrooms with Jeff Dan will be of great interest. And at the other end of the scale, the poisonous plants episode with Dr. Liz Dauncey was a cracker. That was number 32. And somewhere between the two extremes, we had psychoactive plants with Dr. Glenn Shepherd, an ethnobotanist living at the edge of the Amazon forest. If you're interested in gardening for well-being, may I recommend episode 47 with Damien Newman of Thrive Charity, who talks about horticultural therapy. Also, episode 53 with Stefan Batoris of Nature Therapy UK, who leads courses in forest bathing. Episode 56 is fascinating with Olivia Kirk talking about low allergen planting. And I will end on the second to last episode, which was a new avenue for me as I spoke to gardening legend Beth Chatto's biographer, Catherine Horwood. It was great to explore Beth's life and has given me quite a taste for diving into the biographies of gardening figures, so who knows, there may be more of these in the pipeline. So that's the roundup of content. All that remains for me to say is thank you very much for listening, and if you'd like to contact me to say hello or to give feedback on any episodes or even to suggest guests and topics, I'd be really happy to hear from you. I'd also like to say that the podcast is funded by me. There are no adverts on any of the episodes, and I've had 4 episodes sponsored so far, 3 of which haven't been released yet. So if you'd like to join my Patreon subscribers and help support my work, please follow the link in the show notes and chuck me $1 or $5 a month if you're feeling super generous. It does make a difference, and I'm incredibly grateful to those people who already support the show. If it wasn't for you, my life would be a little bit more difficult. Thank you for listening, and I'll catch you next Tuesday for an episode with Stephen Barstow, aka Extreme Salad Man, all about Edimentals. That was actually bloody exhausting. How many amazing people have I spoken to?